Now we are going to talk about how editors look at your paper. And the first thing, of course, that is relevant to think about is, well, what do editors do? Very simple question. Well, the role of the editors, let me see the slides. The role of the editors is to determine, and that is typically done with help of reviewers, to determine whether and how a manuscript can be published in a journal. And in that sense, editors are more or less the gatekeepers of journals and science. Their goal is not to be a kind of butcher and make everybody's life difficult. No, their goal is to get good papers published. Not all papers published, but to get good papers published. And in order to do so in the best possible way, running a journal should not be a one-man show. And that's why we have the peer review system in place, the peer review as a kind of quality filter. And this peer review system, as a kind of extension of the arm of the editors, is aimed at reaching better decisions because the editors make use of the very specific expertise of external reviewers, and the decision is not based on the opinion, the judgment of only one person. So it is spread, and we come to better conclusions. Editors, also reviewers, they can make errors. They may be biased consciously or unconsciously, and that's why it is good that it is a system that is shared and handled by many people. This is important for you as an author because this touches on what you are doing. There are also other things editors are doing that has less to do with you, but just to be complete. Editors are also responsible for defining the aims and scope of a journal, the journal policy. They interact with the editorial board of journals, and they do all this in collaboration with publishers. There are many types of editors. And you may see different names, and sometimes the same positions have a different name, sometimes the same names have different positions. But we have editors-in-chief, associate editors, assistant editors. In general, the editor-in-chief is the one who runs the journal, who has the final responsibility of what happens. But the editor-in-chief is not necessarily the only one who makes decisions when it comes to whether and how an article can be published in a journal. Also, associate editors and assistant editors can make decisions. And the same is more or less true for section editors. This can be editors in certain therapeutic areas or regional editors, Asia, Europe, Americas, all these kind of things. And also guest editors who edit on an ad hoc basis a single thematic issue. Then we have managing editors. Managing editors have a kind of support role in a journal. They help with the identification of reviewers. Are the reviewers suitable, independent, knowledgeable, these kind of questions. And they help with the pre-selection of manuscripts. They, for instance, look at whether the manuscripts are within scope of the journal or not, because if a manuscript is outside the scope of a journal, it makes no sense to do the editorial evaluation. And finally, some journals have special editors focusing on statistics, on language, and all these kind of things. So when we talk about how do editors look at your paper, you should realize that there can be many editors. What I'm going to focus on is the role of the editors that make decisions, that really handle your manuscript rather than a certain aspect of it. And as I said in the previous slide, an important part is peer review. And as I said, peer review is the extension of the editor, and that's why peer review really belongs to the question, how do editors look at your paper? Well, what is peer review? In fact, quite simple. A process by which a scientific work is checked by a group of experts in the same field to make sure that it meets the standards before it is published or accepted. That's all it is. Sounds very nice. Sometimes people say, well, I have different experience, as we can see in the next slide, where it is a kind of battle to get from the left bottom to the right top to get your manuscript accepted, and all these enemies are standing at the sideline and try to prevent you from getting into the journal. Now, in this cartoon, the last in row is the editor, of course, and the others, they advise the editors, they are the reviewers, and so on. Well, where am I going to talk about in this presentation? Well, a number of questions. as peer review is so important, I cannot do without peer review. The origin, the process, what editors ask reviewers to do, the reviewer reports, that is the information that comes back to the editor, the outcomes and the decision-making process of editors, how to respond to requests from editors, and then I will conclude the webinar. Let us first ask the question, well, what is the peer review, the origin of peer review? Well, sometimes people think that it is a very recent invention, but that is not true. Peer review was already occurred at the start of the very first scientific journal, this year exactly 350 years ago. In fact, it was the reason why scientific publishing started, because people wanted to publish in a scientific journal and get the credits for something good. And how could you let others know that what you published is good? Well, by letting your manuscript pass a kind of quality filter, and this quality filter was the peer review process. And that is not insignificant both for readers and authors, because the authors want to know and want to get the credits. I published in a scientific journal, and what I did is good. There is a quality stamp of the quality filter and the gatekeeper role of the editors. But also, as a reader, people want to know that what they read can be trusted. So those are the two important reasons why peer review, why this whole editorial process takes place. Is it necessary for all fields? Well, not necessarily, because if I focus on the right-hand side of this slide, when a field is very small, everybody knows everybody, and there is a lot of collaboration, then people know the quality of a paper once it is published. This is, for instance, the case in small particle physics. Small community, large-scale experiments, everybody, almost the entire community is author on the paper, so there is no need for external peer review, or less of a need. But on the left-hand side of the slide, we see the case of large communities where people don't know each other, and where they were not involved in the experiments that were described in the paper. In that sense, it becomes important that there is a quality filter and that people can trust what is published in these articles when they read it, but also for the author, the credits. What is the process of peer review? Well, this is a slide where we see the editor for the very first time. Here at the top, that's where the editor is. When a manuscript is submitted to a journal, it arrives at the desk of an editor. And the editor asks him or herself a couple of questions. And one of the questions is, are the basic requirements for the manuscript met? For instance, is the manuscript within scope of the journal? If not, then there is no future for that manuscript in the journal. Is it good science? And that is something where the editor usually seeks the support of the reviewers. And is it conceptually novel? And in order to answer that question, it is also very helpful when editors get the opinion of the reviewers. And that is why editors usually send out manuscripts to reviewers. They send it usually to 2 reviewers, and more if that is needed to reach a consensus. The reviewers come back with their comments. It arrives at the desk of the editor again. The editor looks at the comments and then makes a decision to accept or reject the paper, or send it back to the author, and then the author can revise the paper and submit it again to the editor. And then the editor, him, herself, or after a kind of quick second peer review round, makes a final decision, accept or reject the paper. So, in a sense, the editor is truly the spider in the web, and you will definitely have to pass the filter, the quality filter of the editor if you want to get into a journal. And that's why it is so important to know how editors think when they look at your manuscript.